And Senator Kushner is joining now.
Okay.
You're good to go.
Okay, hold on a second before you plug me in. Senator.
Good afternoon.
All right. You got my message?
I did not.
Okay. I sent you an email.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been on the public hearing. I just jumped off that to get on here.
Thank you.
So I believe we have DRS scheduled first. I do see Ernie. We have them until 2:30. Is everybody else from the team here?
Hello, everybody. This is Commissioner Mark Fountain here with the DRS team, and happy to kick off whenever y'all are ready.
We are ready.
Sure. Can you confirm that they heard us? Are you guys hearing us okay?
Yeah, you sound a little far away, but we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to stand up on the table, but we got you loud and clear, so whenever you're ready to start.
Senator Kushner, Representative Baker, we good to go?
Right here.
Taylor, I don't know who on the phone. Who's on the phone?
That's
Okay.
Commissioner. So I think they're all in the same room, but then calling in on the phone.
Yeah, that's us. That's us.
Yeah, that's their team. So you see all their faces on the screen, but they're all on that one phone.
I guess you should just go ahead and start. I was waiting for you, Representative Baker. Are you all set? Are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay. Commissioner, please.
Thank you. Okay, so appreciate your time today with the subcommittee. We are pleased with the governor's proposed budget as it's written. We are actively busy in our collection season. This is really the height of our collection season, so the phones are ringing off the hook, but we know how important it is to do a complete full vetting of each aspect of the budget, so we're honored to be here. We are programmed for 7 additional positions for DRS for FY24. Those are geared primarily towards cannabis and understanding the tax liability as it relates to that. That includes 5 revenue examiners and 2 additional revenue agents for a total of 7. Beyond that, our FTE count is about 600, although we are not obviously at that head count. Right now in FY23, our head count is at 593, and we'll be obviously scaling up beyond that when we get the new positions posted. Right now, currently, people that are working here at DRS is at 462. That's a reflection of the great silver tsunami we had last summer, and people just naturally retiring out as they reached retirement age. So we're in the process of aggressively hiring, putting on new what we call ACTs. Those are account career trainees, as well as other positions and promotional opportunities as well. So all those are happening concurrently as we also continue to work on the collections effort this spring. With that, just want to see if you had any questions or concerns about the program appropriation in the governor's budget.
Well, Representative Baker, do you have any questions? Get a hand. But I wanted to start with you, Representative Baker. If you don't have any questions, I'll call.
No, I don't have any questions. The only concern I have is, Commissioner, when you, if you can possibly go a little closer. I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you and echoing, so, you know, you have to hear as we move on.
What about if I unmute my mic? That help?
I think I get feedback. Just talk a little louder.
Yeah, let me stop the video. Yes, Representative, I was just saying that we are programmed for the next fiscal year at 600 positions. That's a plus up of 7 positions geared primarily towards the collection effort as it relates to cannabis. We are currently, though, staffed at about 460 positions, and we continue to hire, to interview new employees, as well as to conduct promotional exams for people that are currently employed at DRS. We're satisfied with the appropriation from the governor's budget, but certainly always look forward to working with the General Assembly on any priorities or concerns that they may have. And we certainly look to please and to execute those for the benefit of our taxpayers.
Are you all set, Representative?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you.
Great. Representative Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some questions. One is the highway use tax collection data. Can you please supply a monthly report to us of how that's working?
Sure. As you know, we just closed out the February collection, which is a reflection, the January collection was closed out in February at the end of the month. We have registered over 30,000 carriers, both in the United States as well as outside of the country, that include Canada and Mexico. We collected approximately $4.2 million. Of those 30,000 registrants, 89.5% are from out of state. The balance are from in-state. And in terms of breakdown as to who and where that came from, that $4.1 million, we don't have that right yet. We could try to drive that down for you. The signing up and registration has been robust. We've had many questions, webinars that we've conducted in relation to those questions for Motor Carrier Transport Association and a bunch of other organizations that have been interested, as well as local businesses as well. Remember, this is really our first quarter. We expect the revenues to jump up dramatically as we get deeper in the year and people become used to the filing process. First month, right.
Well aware of that, just asking, you know, as we go through this process, if you can continue to supply.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few other questions, if I may. you have in the budget the proposal to buy hospital debt. Which hospital is owed the most money? In the program?
What proposal for hospital debt, that's not ours.
Yeah, hospital beds wouldn't fall under our purview.
I think they're talking about the governor's proposal to sell debt, that's not ours. Right. And you can give the name of the hospital.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can't divulge specific taxpayer information, but I don't believe that's within our scope of work. That may be a proposal in the governor's budget. That's right.
Another question I have is, I've looked through all the various audit reports that are out there, and I recognize that it's, the most current one is, perhaps 4 years old in your particular department. But can you speak to and address the deficiencies that were in there and what we're doing to get them rectified?
Yeah, so part of the APA, one of the deficiencies that was recognized was for our senior management or our managers, we weren't scoring their performance. I've worked on key performance indicators for those management groups and managers. We are having a significant turnover right now, though, so we do plan to implement that as those positions are filled. Remember that the knock on us in the APA report was that you didn't do reviews, so therefore you couldn't do raises, but the raises have always been tied to reviews. We never did the review because we never gave raises until last year. So we have developed a system that we're working on right now. It provides key performance indicators for each management position, and I'll sit down along with our deputy commissioner and interview or work with or review each key manager to make sure that they're meeting our goals and that they are satisfactory in their performance. But remember, we're all just been getting through COVID, and thankfully we're all back to somewhat normal now, not completely normal, but somewhat normal. And so those are the kinds of key things that we're in the process of implementing as we speak.
Five of them that are, I'm looking at. So not, I don't need to take up time that we have here, but if you could, send us a report as to the status of all of them, I'd appreciate that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, many of those.
Thank you.
Representative, when you started speaking, your words were breaking up a little. Could you repeat that?
I said that, when I look at the report here, there's, I think, 5 different items that are listed in the executive summary. And I don't want to waste the time of the committee that we have here and take up time people have for questions. So if you could just supply the committee with a written response, that'd be wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure, yeah, we can do that for you, representatives. Many of those have already been closed out because, as you pointed out, the audit is several years old, but we will provide an update on how they've been closed out or completed. So definitely would like the opportunity to address that. So we'll get that to you.
Thank you. And Commissioner, I know that when you say that you'll get it to her, you mean all of us, because you'll send it to the
committee. Yeah, the committee.
Representative.
Senator Kushner, you're a little in and out.
Oh, I thought it was Representative Harrison. It must be me. I'll try and, there's not a lot I can do. I don't have that problem on my personal computer, my state issued computer. Representative Walensky, did you hear me? You're next up.
I can hear you now, Senator. Thank you very much. I have a couple questions. The highway use tax for the commissioner, if I might. If some of this was asked already by Rep. Harrison, I apologize. The audio on this particular Zoom call is a little bit like sitting in a car wash right now. So it's I apologize if I missed anything. With the highway use tax, can you estimate what percentage of the collections of tax are or will be from trucks that are just passing through our state versus trucks that are actually making deliveries and then invoicing, their, destination here in the state.
We don't have that, we just have the in-state versus out-of-state.
Yeah, we don't, unfortunately, Representative Blinsky, we don't collect that piece of data. We have in-state versus out-of-state, but not who's just passing through and who's delivering. We don't break it down that way.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry. Commissioner Bowden, can you repeat that answer? I didn't hear it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't collect who's making deliveries and who's just passing through. We do collect in-state versus out-of-state, so it would be a little difficult for us to do that. But I'll take a look. I don't think we have that, but it's
Mileage based.
yeah, it's based on mileage versus destination.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It would be helpful to figure out a way to get that information because it sort of dovetails with some of the earlier conversations we as a legislature were having regarding, for instance, tolls where, we were looking to capture revenue from people that were passing through using our roads, but perhaps not actually doing their commerce in the state of Connecticut. And I do understand that, separating one from the other is probably pretty darn tricky, but if you could just sort of let us know how that might be possible or if it can't be done, I would appreciate that very much. And then can you also describe briefly for just for my understanding, what is the basis of collection, the process for collection of this particular tax? Is it an electronically logbook type tax, or is it one where we have just established a protocol where trucking companies need to report their operations in or through the state and then pay accordingly? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so each driver, each hauler or carrier, if you will, handles it a little bit differently, and that's okay. Some keep a logbook in the truck and they'll write down and make a notation of the amount of miles that they spend in Connecticut roads. Others may do it from their home office via GPS or other kind of technology that's out there. So we don't mandate how to do that. They do have to report that in though to their home office, who then will fill out the online information, and it gets sent to us via electronically, and that populates out the form. So, that's something that we've been meeting with carriers about, talking to them about what they think would like to see and what would be a best practice for them, and we certainly will take their feedback. We want to make it easy for them. I've even seen systems in other states where they're utilizing an app that they put on their phone, and then they just pop it in the app, and that gets populated automatically throughout the month to the state that they're working in. So there are ways to do that. We're going to look at those kinds of things, but right now, this is the first month that we've actually had this program, and so we plan on meeting with the Motor Transport Carriers Association later in the spring and see how they're doing, and then get some feedback and suggestions about what's the easiest way for them to collect this data.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Just one last question on the same subject. How do we ensure compliance, and how do we enforce that a pass-through vehicle, one that doesn't stop to do commerce in the state of Connecticut, how do we enforce and know for certain that that they are reporting and we are collecting?
Well, I mean, it's important to take a step back and to remember that all taxes are essentially on the honor system. We don't know that everybody collecting sales and use is remitting the right amount unless we actually do an audit. You don't know that somebody's paying the right amount of income tax unless they're being honest on their income tax form. So we have to understand that the whole system is based on that. But I can tell you this, that we have a very robust enforcement and auditing team here at DRS. We tend to use audit through a very series of algorithms that I'm not going to divulge online, but we can tell whether somebody's complying or not, and that'll trigger an audit, not just of the mileage, but also of the entire business. If we think that's appropriate, we find probable cause to do that. Nobody's going to want a team of DRS agents auditing their business for months and us finding a whole host of other issues that we never thought about. So we think that compliance has been pretty robust for such an early program. You know, people aren't happy about it. We understand that, but the other side of that is that they've been pretty good about registering and understanding that they have to pay it. And look, there are other states that do similar systems. Those other states, you know, they've been criticized for only collecting 50%, things like that. You have to understand, those states mostly have tolls. They have a toll system that the trucks are driving through and paying into as well. We don't have that here in Connecticut. So I feel confident that enforcement and compliance isn't going to be a tremendous issue, but I also want to reiterate that it's always an issue when we collect taxes. There's always somebody out there not paying their full liability, and that's why we have auditors, and that's why we have an enforcement division.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Madam Chair, thank you very much for indulging me. And I'm now, thank you.
I don't see any other hands. I have one one question. I know that you mentioned in your presentation that you have about 30,000 registered carriers. Do you have a sense of how many are out there that haven't registered yet? I know that's hard to predict, but usually there are some estimates of that. What you think?
Yeah, we're trying to get that information, Senator. We've been asked that before. When we do, we'll get it to you and to the committee.
Okay, thank you very much. And I do see Representative Nuccio.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, Commissioner. How are you?
Good, Representative. How are you?
Good. I am not saying I have this or don't have this yet because I've got some backlog in my email right now. But I had sent over questions regarding staffing and lapsing and that, and I was wondering if those have been sent back.
Yes, we have responded to those.
You have. Okay. I don't have those in front of me right now. So I'm just going to ask you generically, of the open positions that you have called out in your responses, are they all assumed to be full-year, full-time employees with a 7/1 start date?
Generally, yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then lapses. Can you tell me what you had in lapses on 6/30? And if you're projecting any kind of lapses for this current year coming up?
In lapses, right now, we have about $3.7 million under personal services, and under the OE, the operating expense, about $540,000. That was last year.
That was last year?
Just so we're clear.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
as of 6/30.
do you propose that you're going to have lapses again this year?
I imagine we probably will. You know, you never can tell folks that retire. Sometimes they don't share their plans with us. They may leave and get a job elsewhere. So there's usually money in the personal services line. And then we always try to run a little bit under budget in the operating expenses, just to be safe so that we don't have to go back and ask for more money.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? And I think for today, that was pretty quick. Much.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Record.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Thanks for the hard work.
Thank you. Taylor, do you know who's up next?
Yep, so we have the treasurer's office at 2:30.
Everybody log off, please.
You should probably
I'm gonna mute DRS now. Sorry, guys.
might want to let the commissioner know to hang up the phone.
I think they're. Anyway, so treasurer's office is at 2:30, and if I'm perusing the attendees, I'm not seeing treasurer's office in yet.
Okay. While we're waiting for them, just let me, Representative Baker, I don't have your number, so I wasn't able to contact you in advance, but I've asked my aide to get it from your aide. And also just wanted to let you know, I didn't receive an email, so we should click on that and make sure you have my correct email address. So we can do that after the meeting. We'll connect. So I guess we're waiting then for a few more minutes to get the treasurer's office. And Taylor, maybe you could give them a heads up that we're ready for them.
You got it.
Thank you.
I see the OTT account has joined the chat. I'm not sure who's on that line though.
Okay, and I see treasurer sitting there. I don't know if you can hear us.
Yes, we can hear you, Senator. How are you?
Great. I think you have very good sound. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good to see you there, sir.
Good to see you as well.
Great. I don't know if you want to start with any comments about your budget.
So I don't have any set comments. Happy to be here with you today. I thought I would just open by introducing you to the team who is here, who will be available answering any specific questions as we go through. To my right is Deputy Treasurer Sarah Sanders. Bettina Brown Eyes, who is the Assistant Treasurer for Debt Management. Jamie Young is the Assistant Treasurer for Unclaimed Property in the Second Injury Fund. Assistant Treasurer Alex Marcelino, who oversees Management Services, and the Assistant Treasurer Bob Scalise for Cash Management.
Great. Well, I think we'll just open it up then for questions from the committee, from the subcommittee. I don't see any hands, and I'm assuming that Representative Nuccio, I expected you to raise your hand.
And always count on me to ask questions, Senator Kushner, always. It's built into the DNA.
I was to ask your questions, and I thought, oh, that would be fair. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for coming in today, Treasurer. I have a few questions. I had sent out some questions, some general questions to everybody, and I'm looking. My email is kind of crazy right now, but I don't think I got anything back from the Treasurer's office regarding vacancies and lapses and such. I was wondering if your team is still working on that, or if you've sent it.
So that information has been sent over, Representative, but we're happy to walk through any of your questions. We have them here in front with our responses. You should have those in writing though as well.
I appreciate that. It may just be a backlog right now. There's a lot of them coming in fast and furious. It's probably an issue on my end, so I appreciate you sending them. But if you don't mind, just high level answering, then if you can tell me how many vacancies, how many you have for approved headcount and how many vacancies you have right now.
Sure. So and I know we discussed this at the prior meeting briefly, but for purposes of the general fund, our agency has 45 authorized and funded general fund positions. 33 of those are currently filled. And we also have one authorized, funded, and filled position in the STO program. We are actively recruiting 7 positions as well. So moving us in that direction of the total of 45 positions.
Okay. Of those 12 vacancies that you have, are they all in the budget as full-time, full year equivalences starting on 7/1?
Yes, they are.
They are all full-time. And I'm assuming on there you put on your average headcount, your average FTE cost?
Yes, and we do have that information provided in our responses to you. Just
Yep. You don't have to tell me that one. I can get that off of the paper. Then the only other question that I have for you right now off the top of my head then is, do you have a projected, did you have a lapse in 6/30? And if so, how much, in what areas? And do you project to have a lapse this year?
To answer
Yeah,
that,
sure.
sure. There was no lapse in the treasurer's budget for fiscal year 22.
Wow, that's really good. Okay, do you project one this year?
No, we do not.
No lapse. Even with your open positions, you have no lapse?
No.
So how does that work then? Because if they're in their full-time, full year equivalents and you have a running headcount vacancy, how are you not producing a lapse?
Well, of the vacancies that we're actively recruiting, we expect all of them to be on the payroll by July 1, and the others we plan to fill as soon as possible within the fiscal year. So we don't anticipate a significant lapse of any kind. For you're talking about the coming year, 24?
In the past, yeah. So I understand what you're saying for the current year. You're saying you're going to project to have every single one of your opens filled. But for the prior year, you had running vacancies, correct?
But we did not have a lapse. In fact, we came in a tiny bit over budget for fiscal year 22.
Can you just talk a little bit
an
about
analysis of that?
Yeah, I'd like to understand that, because if you have vacancies that are floating,
Right.
I would assume you're going to have a lapse. So if you don't, that means you're spending the money elsewhere. And I'd just kind of like to understand where it was. Yep.
Well, but I don't want to say that without checking. Let me do a little analysis. I understand
you don't
your
have to
question.
answer.
You're saying,
Okay. Yeah.
but since we did have some unfilled positions, why did we end up without a lapse? I understand.
Yeah,
the question.
you don't have to
We'll get back
answer
you.
right now.
Yep.
Feel free
I
to do the
understand your
analysis
question,
and do it
though.
up.
It
Perfect.
could be, as some people are suggesting, we had some temporary retiree workers come back because of all our retirements and things like that. Could have
Absolutely.
absorbed that.
All right, I appreciate you getting that information to me. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Sure.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Representative Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. When we look at UConn's 2000 their debt services. I see that there's like an increase in there, and I've kind of watched this over the years and stuff. There's going to be there's new bonding coming up for the debt services for UConn 2000.
We we issue every year for the UConn 2000 program, yes, if that's your question.
I'm sorry?
Your question was, is there new bonding coming up for the UConn program?
Yes.
Yes, we issue bonds every year for the UConn program.
Okay. So is there going to be an increase on, are they seeking for more bonding than that?
Well, to be totally, we had planned to have a $200 million bond issue this spring for the University of Connecticut, but it looks like we're going to be able to, in talking with the university, delay that till this fall, but it will be a larger $300 million bond issue. But this is really just their previously authorized bonding that is being phased in to improve their system. It's not necessarily new, it's new bonds that we're issuing.
Okay, so it's gonna add, so probably next year I should see a totally different number on the debt service. Is that correct?
Well, we did include the new issuance in all of our budget estimates include new issuance.
Okay.
If you want to add anything, has been a change in the schedule.
Yeah, as Sarah mentioned, we were supposed to issue 200 this spring, but that's been pushed off until 300 this fall. So that will impact the FY24 and 25 debt service budgets. They'll be reduced slightly because the issuance was delayed.
So is that going to change what the percentage of how it's going to be spent down over the next 5 or 6 years?
Well, it's kind of two things going on. We've delayed the issuance, so it delays when we're going to start the pay down, but we've increased the size from 200 to 300. So it will increase, but the increase is delayed.
Okay. All right. So I'll just wait to kind of see what it's going to look like. Thank you. I appreciate that an answer. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome to the treasurer. I believe when he presented to us the last time, I asked him, since he was newly elected, if he would go back and pull all of the audit reports that were relevant and provide us with answers to those questions when he came. So I'm looking for those answers. And I know that there's several audit reports, not just of the treasurer's office, but I believe that they do some audits of the various funds that he also manages. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. And I'll for kind of more in depth, I'll turn it over to Sarah. But I would say just to start, as was mentioned at the last meeting, we did sit down with the auditors to talk through those previous audits. And my understanding is that the previous items that were flagged have all been addressed in terms of the outstanding concerns. And we're obviously working closely with them to make sure that we are able to meet those or that we correct those heading into the next audit cycle. But
yes, I'm sorry, I didn't realize there was a direct follow-up requested, but I'll be glad to speak to them. So I looked up the last two audits that they did, the annual and the semi-annual that they did. And specifically, one of the things they mentioned was whether or not we let our short-term investor fund investors know that we were suspending deposits into the reserve fund. And that we did agree that we should do that, and that has been resolved. The other one was what we talked about a little bit last time. It had to do with reconciling of reports with the custodian, and there were some delays relative to the transition from Bank of New York to State Street. And we agreed that we needed to correct that, and we have corrected that, and the transition has been completed. So I think by looking at the last two audits, we can see if there's any, because they revisit their other concerns and they found other things had been resolved. But these were the most recent ones. But if there's something else that you saw that you would like us to respond to, we'd be glad to respond.
No, thank you for that. I think it's important knowing your function for, you know, the taxpayers and the citizens of the state that, you know, that they can be assured that we're up to snuff. So thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Representative Nuccio.
I'm super sorry, Madam Chair. I forgot that we also had treasurer, the debt service underneath here. So I have one question for that, ma'am, if you'll humor me. I was hoping you could kind of tell me, Mr. Treasurer, I don't quite know how to refer to you. You had mentioned when we met before that the governor's proposal to use the $80 million in bond premium towards ongoing projects rather than paying down the debt was something that you really didn't agree with. And I was wondering if you could kind of give us a little bit more background on that. I am debt avoidance myself. I think we should pay off as much debt as we can when we can. So I'm trying to kind of understand what this means. And if you could kind of elaborate on that, I have to then try to figure out how to find $80 million in the budget to offset this. So I was wondering if you could just kind of go over your opinions on this, how you would rather see it work, and what you think the pros and cons of this proposal are.
Sure. So just to clarify, so the position is that premium that is issued when we issue bonds, the most prudent kind of fiscal approach to this would be to use that bond premium to fund projects like the actual bonds are being used for, rather than using it to pay debt service on the bonds, which is what that $80 million is currently designated to do. So when bond premiums are kind of an upfront payment when we issue bonds, and when the interest rates are low, say, you know, when bonds are priced, interest rates are at 2.5%. Oftentimes investors will want that interest rate to be up at, say, 5%, and they'll be willing to kind of front pay the difference between those interest rates. And that is the premium that we receive when we do a bond issue. The reason it's more prudent to use that for projects or to lower the amount of bonds that we're ultimately issuing is because the effect of using that premium to pay debt service is essentially using borrowed money to pay debt service. And so we would recommend that the smarter approach would be to use those proceeds for projects.
Okay, so I thought that's what the governor was deciding to do, was to use it for projects.
No, so there was a policy, so the state has historically done it this way, and as was proposed by the governor, that policy of using bond premium to pay debt service was set or is set to lapse at the end of this fiscal year. And the governor's proposal is to extend that practice for 2 more years and to use the bond premium to pay debt service to the tune of the 80 million over the biennial. And Sarah or Bettina, I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add there, but.
Well, Bettina, we did submit a pro forma that you request, which I thought was quite illustrative if you have any questions on it as a follow-up to the last meeting, but it kind of demonstrates. Go ahead, Bettina.
Yeah, we put together a side-by-side comparison so you could see exactly how the bond premium is used. We did a hypothetical scenario where scenario 1 issued $500 million. And under that hypothetical, the bond premium received would be about $50 million. And the way the general obligation bond program currently works, that $50 million would then be used to pay bonding cost of issuance, and then the remainder of it, the bulk of it, it would be used to pay other interest, would be used to pay the interest on the bonds. The way the other programs work at the state, for example, the University of Connecticut and the special tax obligation bond program, which is for transportation, when they issue $500 million for a project, they get that $50 million premium too, the same way the GO program gets it, but what they do is they downsize the amount of bonds that are issued. So instead of issuing $500 million in bonds, they issue $450 million in bonds. So as you can see, and it's laid out in the book we presented to you, the debt service on $450 million over 20 years is obviously less, but you don't have the benefit of having that, well, if you call it a benefit, you don't have that $50 million up front to be used to offset the debt service in the front end.
So I don't know, I guess that's the part I don't get. You're saying to offset the debt service, right? So you're taking the 50 million, you're down paying other debt.
Yeah, so the budget had assumed debt service on 500 million, but now we've got an extra 50 million that doesn't need to be used for debt service. It's in effect used to pay debt service, but then it results in a $50 million lapse for that.
How is it resulting in a lapse?
Right.
Well, that's true, but we did several years ago start budgeting premium before we received it because we were having such large lapses. So if we get more premium than we project, then we will have an additional lapse, right?
So the premium that's coming in, you're using it in the general fund?
Well, it's used to offset the debt service that's required for those bonds that are issued and other bonds that are already outstanding. So in effect, it reduces the amount of debt service that's required to be funded by the general fund to pay. So then it ends up being a lapse to the general fund.
Because you were planning on the 500 and you're only paying the 450.
Right. I mean, that's a very simplest, that's a kind of a simple way of showing it.
And what they're looking to extend right now, that's that piece, right?
Yeah, continuing to get that premium up front as opposed to using that premium to downsize the amount of bonds that are actually issued.
So what you're saying the alternative is same $500 million, you get that 50 million and you're paying for projects with that cash and then you're.
So you only need to issue 450, exactly. You're still ending up with 500 million to pay for all those projects. 50 million of it is coming from that premium, and then you only have to issue 450 million for the balance. So the result is the 500 million that we need for projects, but the amount of bonds that you're issuing is reduced by that 50 million.
I see. I think that's where it wasn't making sense. So for scenario 2 with the 500 million, you're getting the 50 million and you're paying down debt, other debt, and then you're still issuing the 500.
No, we're taking the 50 million and instead of issuing 500 million for those projects, we're only issuing 450 million for projects, and the extra 50 that we need for projects is coming from that bond premium. We're going to get bond premium no matter what. It's just
yeah, but I guess this what we're saying here, that's what it's not making sense, because it sounds like either way we're issuing 450 million for debt.
No, we're under the way we currently do it, we issue the full 500 million, so we have to pay debt service on 500 million, but we're getting that extra 50 million. The statutes don't allow us to downsize the amount of par that we issue. Like, unlike the other programs that we issue, the statutes allow us to downsize par by the amount of premium that we get. The GEO program does not allow us to do that. So we can't issue less than the amount of the projects that we're funding. So we have to issue the 500 million. And then on top of that, we get the premium. And
just so you're getting the 550 million.
Correct.
Okay. You're getting 550 million, not.
Right. And what I
they're
think
only bonding 500 million.
Correct. And under the Treasurer's recommended approach, we would be bonding 450 million, and we'd use that 50 million that we're going to get from premium to add to the 450 million of bonds to get to the 500 million. So we still end up with 5 million for project proceeds.
Okay, I think that makes sense. I might want to spend 10 minutes with you at some other point talking about it, but I think it makes
There's a
sense.
schedule.
There's a, yeah, we included
Okay.
a little comparison. and
I
it
gotta go
shows-
back and find that. My email is just like a nightmare. It's like a nightmare's nightmare right now. Like it belongs in the Nightmare Before Christmas as like, you know, the scary guy in the corner. So I will look for that. Thank you very much.
It's a very complex thing to understand.
Well, I think I just need to see it. You know, I'm an accountant. I
Yeah.
understand that debt schedules and all of that, which is why I'm like debt. I hate debt, but you know, I get it. So I just need to have it in front of me so I can look at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Austin, good to see you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have just one quick question. Mr. Treasurer, I saw you in the hallway and I didn't follow this up with an email. I was talking about the CIF funds that go directly. I'm trying to find out, do they go directly to the Treasurer's office and then into the CIF fund, or do they, how do you get those funds? Is it coming from OPM? Is there any way that we can get a breakdown of towns on CIF and how much each town is paying? And when was the last time we raised the rates to go into the community investment fund? So I think that these are all things that I would like to understand better. And I just can't understand how the funding stream is happening in CIF. Are the towns paying you directly on the land recordings? I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. And I apologize for not sending you an email directly on that.
No problem, Senator. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Bob.
So we actually receive from the towns the checks for the recording fees, and then we actually record it in core, which allocates it to the CIF fund. And controllers gets involved in the allocation to where it's going. So the combination, so we receive the funds, record them, and they do the allocations.
Is there any way that you can get me a listing of which towns, what towns have been paying and how much that they have been paying? Is that done on a quarterly basis to you or?
Monthly.
Monthly?
Yep.
Okay. Is there any
So
way
what-
I can get a
Sure.
couple of years worth of information on that?
Yep. So we'll have gross. So
Yep.
if they're paying us $1,000, the allocation piece, we would not have that. But we can certainly tell you that Avon paid $1,000.
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
I
we can do
can
that.
get what CIF is paying out. I
Okay.
can take care of that component of it. But I'm not understanding how the funds are coming into CIF and how much each town is paying.
Okay. Do you need it broken down? They actually pay 3 different rates based on the land records. Do you need it broken down by that as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. And my understanding is by statute that it's, you know, the fees are assessed by that amount. So, but we certainly can give you that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions, or I don't see any other hands? Seeing none, then I think we are done with you today. Thank you for being here. I will call you Treasurer Russell.
Thank you, Senator. Nice to see you all.
Thank you for being here.
So next at 3:15, we have OPM.
Any chance we can get them earlier? If not, then maybe we just take a break till 3:15.
Let me see what I can do. They should be joining now.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Appropriations Committee. I am Paul Potamianos, and I serve as the Deputy Secretary of the Office of Policy and Management. I know that we're starting a few minutes early, and my team is attempting to jump on now.
Great. Do you need a couple more minutes or are they here already? I see Mark is here.
Let me
Senator.
take a look, see who we have.
I know we got done a little faster than we expected. That's unusual. Usually we keep you waiting, right?
I think I'm still waiting for one or two folks to join us.
Sure. We'll give you a couple minutes.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You let us know when everybody's here, okay?
Will do. I'm hoping we get Martin Heft on here shortly, because I imagine there may be a few questions for his area, and Claudio Gualteri as well. So that's who I'm waiting for.
Did I miss something? Are we heading?
Good.
Representative Walker, we bumped them up 15 minutes early, so they're waiting for a couple more people to join us.
Okay.
We
Hi,
were,
Paul. Hi, Mark.
Good afternoon, Representative Walker. We're, I think, waiting for Claudio Gualteri and Martin Heft to join us, as I imagine there may be a few questions for their areas.
Here comes Claudio.
and it's not their fault. We just sped through the first two.
Well, we're happy to speed through the OPM piece as well, if you'd like.
We just say we're efficient. We're efficient, right?
Oh,
Senator
okay.
Kushner, we were very efficient.
I have a feeling we'll have a few more questions for you guys. Especially since I see our chairs here, both of our appropriation chairs are on, so I'm guessing you'll get a little bit more questions.
So while I think Claudio's with us, I want to make sure that I have Martin. But in the meantime, I just wanted to ensure that you're all aware that we did provide information to the committee administrator, in response to your questions from our last meeting, and hope that you all had an opportunity to at least obtain the materials, if not look at them.
We got
Yeah, we got them today and there's quite a bit there, so I'm sure people will need some time to look through them, but.
Well, I'm sorry, we sent those last week, so I'll apologize. Apologize you didn't have more time to look at those.
Well, I may have gotten more last week. I just haven't gone through all of my emails, but I see Martin is here too, so why don't you go ahead and start?
I don't have any prepared remarks, so if you would like, we could walk through those questions you provided to us at the last work session, or if you prefer, we can be available to answer any questions you may have for us that have arisen in the meantime.
Why don't we start with maybe briefly summarizing, going through your responses, and then we can hopefully have time for some more questions.
Okay, well, we can do that. So the first question we received was about the number of people that the veterans property tax exemption applies to. And the question was, what does that exemption mean? And so we provided information relative to that. There were just over 10,000 recipients in fiscal year 22 and about 9,400 recipients in fiscal year 23, the current year. And there is a long sort of statutory definition of who is eligible for that veterans property tax exemption. Basically, they're folks who are eligible at the local level for an exemption as a veteran, and the state provides an additional property tax relief benefit to those towns who provide veterans and certain survivors with property tax relief under this provision. Not sure how detailed you'd like to be about the program.
Let me just ask if there's anyone who has any other questions about that item, about that first question. I don't see any hands, so I think you can go on to the next one. I know you have like 16 here, so.
Yes, we do. So I think Senator Austin had some interest in updating the value of the exemption, noting that the exemption, I think, was originally instituted back in the late 1800s. So $1,000 of the property tax is exempt from taxation at the municipal level. And I think legislative staff had done some work as to what that, if one were to inflate that to current days, what that would be worth. And I think it was something on the order of $58,000 of property would be exempt. That's really a legislative question as to policy and to funding, because that would be a loss of municipal property tax revenue, and whether or not the committee would have some approach to addressing that or not.
Thank you. I see Senator Austin does have her hand up, so let's go ahead with that.
Good afternoon, Senator.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Well, thank you.
So it's actually not off the property tax. It's off the assessed value of the property. So I think that makes a big difference in the discussion that we're having. And when it was done in 1890, and I'm still doing work on this just for everybody's edification, it was $1,000 off of the assessed value of a home. That the average price of a home in the 1890s was $6,000. The average price of a home right now is about $350,000. And so it's equating to about $15 today off of the somebody's property taxes when you work it out. Although it's kind of all over the map, and there's still a lot of work to be done on this, but I appreciate you doing that work. But I think it was OFA that did all the analysis.
Yes.
So I'm going back to the 1890s because I'm trying to figure out, how did we come up with that number? Was there any legislative intent? What war was it associated with? I originally thought it was associated with Vietnam, and 1890 was before World War I. So I'm not certain how we came about with it, but I'm still working on that one. We are working on the disabled, 100% total and permanent disabled vets, which is a much smaller number. There's about 217,000 veterans in Connecticut, with about 3,000 that are permanently and totally disabled due to their work within the confines of when they were in the military. Madam Chair, with your indulgence, can I ask one question on another, yeah. So I couldn't figure out on that veterans property tax. I saw Jeff's response to that. I don't understand exactly what we're paying for, though. I still don't understand that, and I don't know if
Martin's here.
that is something with Martin that we would be paying.
It is.
attention.
And so it's a local property tax exemption. And what the state has, as I understand it, is an additional support to those municipalities who offer an exemption beyond sort of that local level. So Martin, I don't know if you want to jump in and talk about that a bit.
Sure, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. And just one correction, it's a change in the base from that 1,000 would be 58,000, not 5,800.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yep, thank you. Right.
And that assessed value, just as a correction to keep everybody in line, that it would be a large assessment.
It would be
change increase,
16%.
keeping it at that 16% about now the property value. So just that's
on an average basis.
Yes.
So
So
the equivalent to $300 million.
Correct, right. So locally it's that $1,000, as we know, for that. And the additional vets is those that meet the income requirements. The state provides an additional veteran support for those that do that, where the exemption can total up to 200% of the local exemption. So that is what the state reimburses for. The local municipality has to provide the exemption. Then there's an application that comes to OPM for an additional veterans. That's the portion here that we budget for, and the numbers that we've provided is the additional portion there. So that's above and beyond that local exemption, we provide then back to the municipalities the amount there.
For the exemption, the additional exemption off of the base property tax exemption, it's related to the base property tax, or is it related to, because there is a number of other exemptions that there are relative to Purple Heart recipients, disabled vets, Gold Star moms. I'm trying to figure out, what is that an additional exemption off of what? It's the pre part of that discussion, Martin.
Yeah, it's off of the basic exemption of that $1,000.
Okay. And so if somebody has a lower income level, they can get more than the 1,000 off of their property taxes. And would those property taxes be real property, or would it also include motor vehicle?
I believe it's real property, and I can double check that for you.
And do you have any idea how many veterans this applies to, and in which towns?
So we can provide you listing of the towns. We know that, as was mentioned, fiscal 22, it was 10,000 veterans that we did the additional to, and 380 and 23. That's the additional portion. The same token for fiscal 23, the local exemption was 93,000. And in 22 was 98,000 that do the local exemption.
98,000 off of the assessed value of the property?
No, that's the number of applicants. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Those are the number of just so you could see a comparison that, on the local level, the municipal, option for that $1,000, exemption, there are, 93,000 that were in fiscal 23 that local municipalities offered that to. On OPM side for fiscal 23 was 9,380 that actually got the additional on that.
So about 10% of the people,
Correct.
of the veterans who qualified at the local level got the additional state exemption.
Correct.
Okay. And that is relative to the economic status of that particular veteran?
Correct, on their income levels.
And it would be income, whether they're working or pensions or annuities or social security, that would be included as the income level?
Yeah, I could, we provided the link to the whole program that has the listing
I
of
looked
what
at it.
qualified income levels are. I can verify that and get that to you, Senator, though, to, clarify that for you
Yep.
of what is actually included in the qualifying income.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions on this part? I don't see any hands, so why don't we go to the next one?
Okay, the next question was about the tax relief for elderly renters program. Question was how many renters received funding by town, and what we provided to you was a legislative report that shows the by town breakout of the recipients of funding under that program.
Okay.
You also asked for ethnicity data on those recipients. That's not something that we collect, so unfortunately, we're unable to provide an answer to that.
Okay. People can look at that. So why don't we move to the next one?
Right. Similar answer to the next question was about property tax relief elderly freeze program. This is a program where there are only 3 individuals remaining in the program. You had asked again about the town's distribution of those recipients by town. That is also in that legislative report. The 3 people are ages 90, 98, and 99.
Any questions on that? Okay, I don't see any hands. Go ahead.
All right. The next item was around the municipal revenue sharing fund proposal that we had. I'm not sure whether it was a specific question. I think you wanted to talk about the proposal, I guess, in some depth. And I think your concern was that it may not be easily seen when you're looking at the budget. I think that's the way the question was phrased to us. I think we would believe that it provides additional clarity because it brings the off-budget piece on budget to show everybody what the totality is of municipal aid that's available, general government municipal aid. But we're happy to engage in a conversation about that if you have specific questions or.
I know there were questions when we had our earlier meeting. I think, concerned that you'd be able to, with the consolidation, that you'd still be able to see everything clearly. So I don't know if anybody has any further questions about that particular issue. Again, I don't see any hands, but if we have additional questions on that, we'll get back to you.
We're happy to talk in more detail about that if you'd like. The next question was, how many people are there on the wait list for individuals on the autism spectrum? And this is information that we obtained from the Department of Social Services. They have a waiver program that they operate under Medicaid. As of January, the end of January, there were 2,007 individuals who were on the wait list for that particular waiver program.
That's a lot. Any questions about that? Okay, go right ahead.
The next question was to bring to the committee the analysis you did on UConn and colleges and state universities regarding their, I think it says bringing off the liabilities. I assume the question is relative to the fringe benefit analysis. But we did, it says no verbiage, just an Excel sheet. We provided an Excel sheet that details the calculations that we used in developing the proposal around the fringe benefit transfer. I do want to point out we have been engaged in conversation with CSCU over the information that they provided to the committee. It's our position that there may be some factual errors in their presentation. I'm not sure that they agree yet. We have talked about their the data set that they provided, which doesn't match the information that's available to us from the state controller's office. So we continue to have a back and forth about that, and we will be sure to provide to the Office of Fiscal Analysis any any updates to the numbers from either CSU or from us, should we come to a conclusion that's different than what we proposed in the governor's budget.
So can I ask a question about that? Right ahead. Thank you, Madam Chair. What you laid out group life, medical, etc. Where was the variance that you saw in their numbers?
We believe that they have understated the level of fringe benefit support. Let me see if I'm getting this right, because we've had several discussions, even today we had it back and forth with them. Looking at the response that their chief financial officer, Ben Barnes, provided to us, we believe that they have excluded some fringe benefit transfers from their data that we've included in ours that I think serve to underrepresent the level of fringe benefit support that they are getting from the state.
That they're getting currently?
That they are getting currently, correct.
Okay.
And I believe it's almost a $42 million difference just in fringe benefits. Their explanation was that they're excluding fringes related to, I guess, activity that's not supported by tuition. It's hard for me to understand their argument, but we are talking to Ben Barnes about their numbers.
So they're saying that their fringe benefit is only including direct staff. Is that what that is?
They suggested that they're losing a subsidy of 16.2 million, and that's part of the shortfall that they're trying to make up from you. And that 16 million was part of our numbers, and they also have a calculation that doesn't include $42 million of additional block grant support. So in some ways overstates the level of problem that they are identifying relative to the governor's proposal.
Okay. So,
but again, I want to do them justice. They dispute our position. We are going back and forth as to how they came up with their numbers. They don't tie out to numbers we have from the controller system. So that's what we're trying to get down to, is how do they arrive at their numbers? So that's the basis of the dispute, I think.
okay. So when can we get the numbers that you feel are accurate?
I believe we have provided our backup to OFA already. That shows how we got to our numbers.
You included in your packet fringe benefits, and you have CSU at I can't. Thank you. The numbers are small enough so that I can struggle here. 232 million. So you're saying that 232 million is inaccurate? It's on your sheet. I'm reading your sheet.
No, I think we believe our numbers are accurate.
I'm sorry, your numbers are accurate and theirs are inaccurate.
We believe that.
Yeah.
No, we believe that the issue that they're raising for you as insufficient funding from the governor does not fully capture all the funding that we have provided to them for fringe benefit relief. And I know Greg Messner's on the line, and he's been engaged in all the calculation back and forth. So Greg, if I've misstated anything, please feel free to jump in.
No, I think that's it. There's some differences between what the controller has reported as expended by both in the general fund and CSCU. And I think the other area of dispute revolves around the one-time funding that the legislature provided from carry forwards in fiscal year 22, and whether the nature of that was fringe benefit support or general block grant support. And so I think those are probably the two main issues where we differ.
Yeah, on that last issue, we relied on the write-up in the OFA budget book, which characterized the support as fringe benefit support. I believe CSU has a different interpretation that it was more generalized support than being fringe benefit support.
Okay, and
Nevertheless.
Either way.
this is for 22?
Yeah, so our analysis starts with 22 as the most recently completed fiscal year that is finished. And so we have, one would think, numbers from the controller that wouldn't need to be argued about. And so, yeah, that's the basis. Is the starting point is fiscal year 22. There's a question that CSU raises about how those numbers would change in the future. It's a valid discussion to have, but I think that the nature of our back and forth that Paul was discussing right now is more around trying to get to an agreement on what would the governor's proposal have done if it had been in place for fiscal year 22.
And I want to point out, we had shared our numbers with CSU well before the governor's budget was produced. So I'm not sure why just now they've identified some areas that they believe are that they dispute compared to what we've presented. But
Okay. Okay.
that's where we are.
I will take this out. I may follow that. Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Seeing no hands, let's move to the next one.
Sure. There was a series of questions, I think, related to our justice assistance grants. You wanted a breakdown of what those justice assistance grants are, who receives the funds. We have a couple of pages in our response detailing the various grants that our criminal justice policy and planning division administers and who the recipients are of those funds. I don't know how much detail you want to get into here, or if you would prefer to.
I think let's take a look at it, and then if
Okay.
there are questions, we can come back to that one.
Okay.
So the, good afternoon, everyone. So the Justice Assistance Grants line is used to cover state match requirements. Our division, Criminal Justice Division at OPM, administers a variety of federal grants, and 3 of them require that the state provide a state match for a portion of the federal funds received. It's a way of demonstrating state commitment to the grant. And so OPM's line for justice assistance grants is about $800,000. And so for the 3 grants, we develop a estimated budget for how to allocate those state match dollars to the grants based on what we expect the sub-award recipients to receive. So the 3 grants include the National Criminal History Improvement Project, the Violence Against Women Stop Grant, and the Residential Substance Abuse Treatment Grant. And so those funds that we provide in state match contribute to the grant. They're not the Justice Assistance Grant. The title may not be the clearest. It's not sort of a grant that we award using this line to people who submit proposals or applications for grants. It's what we must spend toward the grant mixed with federal money.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So this is in order to get the federal money, we have to spend this.
Correct. That's part of the condition when we sign for the grant is the assurance that the state will provide the funding via state match together with the federal money.
Great. And I just see there's a hand up, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On these grants, I see that the breakdown of the different projects. Which one, how would you categorize it? So for instance, which ones would go to like law enforcement?
Right. So thank you, Representative Baker. The typically these are federal formula allocation grants that typically spell out the purposes for the funding. They establish categories, and for each of them has different requirements around how we as a division administering the funding develop a plan. For the Criminal History Improvement Project, those are focused on entities that manage criminal history record systems. So a law enforcement agency desk receives the funding, as does the judicial branch, because the state criminal history repository is managed by desk. So that kind of narrowed toward that entity. And sir, the residential substance abuse treatment grant that goes through the Department of Correction, since we, in states that have jails and prisons, I imagine that the states, have county administered jails and state administered prisons. They manage the money, but in our state, the DOC administers all jails and prisons in Connecticut. So the DOC is the recipient. There's wider variety, Representative Baker, on the STOP grant, the violence against women's. There's a portion of that goes toward prosecutors, law enforcement, and to police, but there are other categories that are set aside for victim services, for the courts, for discretionary spending, prioritizing underserved communities. And so for an example of STOPs, we develop a strategic plan and identify ways to use the funding. The law enforcement that receives funding under STOP, as an example, is the Coalition Against Domestic Violence for their lethality assessment program. They provide support to law enforcement responding to domestic situations, performing lethality assessment of the situation. That's funding that we can provide and support. So typically what we do for these circuits, we've administered these grants over many years, is we follow the federal guidelines, we develop the planning, we do outreach, and then we award the funding according to the structures and guidelines.
So the ones that are provided for local municipalities, do they have to match some of those grants also?
Representative Baker, no, there's no match required from any of the agencies that receive the funding. The match is provided by OPM as the administrator, because we are the OPM is the signatory on the grant award, and that's where the condition confronts us that we must provide the state funding. So that's why we budget at the beginning of every year for the estimated award amount, and therefore the estimated state match that we have to provide. So we provide that service as the grant administrator by managing the state match, and we're grateful for the appropriation we receive from you all to do the work.
So just to kind of circle back on what you said, those grants are pretty much detail about what that money can be used for.
Rep Baker, yes, they are
Okay.
pretty strange, but we're always happy to learn more about ways our grants can be used. If you have ideas, sir, about ways these grants could reach, provide wider reach, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. I know our grants team would. We remain in frequent contact with these are all federal grants, so there are people in federal offices that we are in touch with questions, with ideas. We really want to make the best use of these funds. So we are always looking for new ideas. So I'd be happy to hear advice today from you, sir, or follow up with you to talk more about the grants and hear how we could utilize them more effectively and broadly.
Yeah, no, what I was mainly pertaining to in terms of when these agencies, these organizations, are they more of administrative or they're more for on the front line programming and things of that nature?
Great question. I think on the NCHIP grant, here's how maybe the NCHIP grant, those are dollars going directly to equipment, technology upgrades for training. The STOP grant is going directly to a variety of means, but some of them are direct services, human trafficking. Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Good variety.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Austin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Paul, LIHEAP, we put in an additional $30 million that was conditional, depending on, I guess, whether or not all federal funds were spent. And my understanding is that many of the people are down to, for example, in the Norwich region, there are 1,700, almost 1,800 clients who have $400 or less in their CEAP benefits. Usually DSS will extend those dollars. Are we planning on putting something out, as the legislature was pretty much all on board for seeing these people have additional dollars? Is that something that you can get to us?
It's my understanding that DSS has been talking about an extension. I don't know, Claudio, if you have any update on that. I don't know where we stand with respect to review on that issue.
Yes, Paul, we did go back and forth with Peter, and it's our understanding that even given within the existing federal resources, we'll be able to do at least a short-term extension. I think they had asked for a 1-week extension to allow some additional time. So we've granted them some direction on how to do that, and we expect guidance to be coming out shortly. We could follow up with additional details, Senator.
Thank you, Claudio. It's not just the extension of the time that they can apply for it, but the extension of the amount of benefit that can go out to people. So the benefit that could go out to people was, we determined a certain dollar amount to go out to people. We are now at the point where some people can't get any more oil, and it's March. And, you know, I have a very old house, and you know, oil this year has been so expensive, and I track it ever since I've been in this house. So I have years and years of tracking. There is just no way that some people are going to be able to get any more oil this year. And are we, that $30 million was meant to be spent. And so is the administration going to allow some people to get more oil, or are we dead set on not doing that?
Well, I think the language, first of all, on that additional allocation was it's available when the existing federal funds are exhausted, and the existing federal funds are not yet exhausted. So we're not at that point. I hear what you're asking, which is, can additional benefits be approved? I don't know, Claudia, with respect to the LIHEAP plan, what would approval of additional benefits require? Revision to the plan?
So we're in a little bit of a different area here, because typically if the contingency plan that you all approved, that the legislature approved, does have operational details to DSS to be able to extend benefits or to contract on benefits depending on differing amounts of federal funding we receive. In this case, it wasn't the additional amount of federal funding. We're planning to use all of those resources to make good on the approved plan and the benefits levels that we all agreed to. The question becomes whether this side pocket of federal ARPA dollars applies to those same block grant rules and gives us the discretion as the agency and the administration to simply add new benefits or do so on the contingency of the block grant. That's a little bit unclear to us. We may need further clarification from you all on doing that. So we can take that one back, evaluate.
So is that, are you telling us that we didn't give you enough flexibility in the legislation to do so?
So yeah, the block grant approval process had a contingency plan.
Correct.
But that was attached to the federal block grants for LIHEAP. So we've had the flexibility was plenty fine in that regard. With the ARPA allocation in special session, as Deputy Secretary Paul Tamianos just said, it suggests that it's a supplemental pool if federal resources aren't enough. So the current
But it doesn't,
plan,
I'm sorry, Claudio, I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
but we did not say that the federal block grant already allows us to expand the benefits to individuals. And we said that if there weren't enough federal dollars to cover what we needed to do, this $30 million was available. And so I'm trying to get to the point. Are we saying that we did not give you enough flexibility on the federal dollars? If you know,
I think that the language has passed envisioned if the benefit that's described in the LIHEAP block grant plan couldn't be supported by the federal dollars, then the 30 million, the ARPA funding was available to help plug that gap. If you're asking about an extension of benefits, that's a different policy consideration, which
But it is,
yeah, go ahead.
but Paul, the block grant already allows for an additional extension of LIHEAP plans. And if we are using this as a stopgap, it already allows for that to happen. So
I think
we
there
were
are
saying-
some changes though, Senator, we would have to do. If we make any major changes, we may have to inform the federal HHS of those benefits. So there are some process things that we just have to work through with DSS on what's possible.
But
So
we'll take that back because we understand the issue that you're raising.
yeah, I have 1,792 homes that will be called in less than 2 weeks. So are we going to wait until April or May to make a decision? So can we get a decision in the next couple days? And do Representative Walker and I, and I'm sure the chairs of this subcommittee need to sign a letter asking for a decision here, or can we count on just a verbal request for the decision on this issue? We already have the dollars that we have appropriated. We clearly had the intention of spending it on LIHEAP. So I'm just trying to make sure that there is a clear understanding of our intention here. And I don't want to see people calling me up saying that, you know, that they are not going to have heat tomorrow. You know what I mean? Because oil's expensive. I paid $3.76 just 2 days ago. And it didn't fill up my 2 tanks. I asked for a fill up, but I don't even think they had enough on their tanker to fill it up. So apparently,
You mean Kathy, they're not already calling you? Because I got 5 just last weekend.
Right.
5.
Oh,
I see
I will bring the issue back.
Representative Walker wants to.
I just want to jump in a little bit because we did this well over a month ago, and that the special session was very clear, we thought, and if it wasn't clear, I would have thought that somebody would have brought it to our attention that we needed to have more specific language if there was a concern about what we passed in that budget. People in Connecticut were counting on that, and we said we wanted to make sure that people did not have the circumstance that they're. Thank you, Representative Belinsky, we got it. But we want to make sure that people are getting the services that we expect. So I'm very confused. What more detail do you need that we can provide? I think we were clear that if we ran out of money, and if you look on the news there, everybody's talking about the money has run out for Operation Fuel, and others are scrambling now. So it's an emergency, and we set aside the money. So how do we get that distribution done as soon as possible?
I will take the issue back and we will get you a response on that.
Okay, tomorrow? Tomorrow?
Well, I can't guarantee exactly when the response will come, but I will indicate the nature of your request, and I think they understand the timing.
Okay,
We'll get back to you.
Okay, the urgency is not coming just from us.
Oh, I understand that.
And it's coming from us because we wanted to build this in to help the constituents of Connecticut. So
I think our takeaway was a little different than yours during the special session, but I understand what you're asking. We will definitely get back to you. I understand the urgency of the request.
Yeah, I will just add that I think that everyone who voted on that, there was a lot of press about it too. So we all feel like we, thought we were addressing a problem. We were anticipating a problem, given the price of oil and fuel. And so I think that's why people are concerned that there's any question. But thank you for that conversation and for getting back to us. And I don't see any other hands at this time. There are a set of questions from Representative Nuccio, and I see that you've responded to them. Representative Nutria, we did get those in writing. Do you want to go through them or?
I just have a couple of follow-ups from those, if that's okay, Senator Kushner.
Of course.
Okay, thank you very much. So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you guys for the breakdown that you gave of all the opens and that. It was the most thorough that I've gotten from anybody. And I really enjoyed that. I love getting into the numbers and the data. So thank you for that. The only couple of
I'm sorry, we didn't mean to be that thorough. If
Oh, no,
nobody else
no.
was that thorough.
You should see some of the other responses. Some were good, some were okay, some didn't even reply. You know, you guys like gave me the history. I love it.
Good,
There's no such thing as data overload in my world. The only thing that I would ask though is in regard to the average rate, the average FTE rate. I know you said it kind of depends, and I was wondering if there's a way to get kind of an average rate of maybe of what your opens are then, if not just like a general FTE average to use in budgeting.
There, an average salary. I mean, I guess one could take our total salary line and divide it by the number of people, but that's not a useful metric.
Right. Well, it looks like, you know, from the opens that you have, like I would say, you know, you've got about, you know, what, 22 opens based off of this here, you know, just kind of like an average of what some of those positions are, maybe. It doesn't have to be exact, just.
We tend to hire at the entry level.
Okay.
You know, entry level salaries, depending on the classification we're looking at, you know, we're, you know, 60, 70, 80, depending on the type of classification. And, you know, it's very different than if I were to leave this agency tomorrow. Refilling me is, you know, going to be different than refilling an entry level position. So when you ask an average, we're such a small organization with such a wide variability in salaries. It's hard for me to tell you what an average is. You know, and if I, not to pick on an agency, but like a DOT, they have so many maintainers that the average for them might be, you know, more in that, you know, entry level salary, but OPM is so variable. I wish I could give you a good number, but it's.
That's okay. 60 to 80 works. That works. It's high level, so that's fine. Then the next question that I have is a bunch of people gave me the generic response back on the lapses that you guys have here. And I don't want to be rude or anything, but that file that you had is pretty big, and searching through everybody is, you know, to be quite honest, with all the meetings and that, I just don't have the time. So I was wondering if you could just give a little explanation, or somebody could, of what your lapses were for 630, and then what they were, where they were, and then if you anticipate lapses for this year so far.
So,
and you don't have to do it right now if you don't have it in front of you.
I will say, let me take the last question first, which is lapses for this year. Every month we do a projection of our spending, state spending, and we publish that in our controller's letter. I know that your Office of Fiscal Analysis does a similar exercise. So to the extent we would project any lapses, we would portray them in that letter.
Okay.
At this point, I don't have the letter sitting right in front of me. I don't think we have any lapses projected for OPM. Okay. History in the past, when you ask about lapses, it's a sort of a tricky question, because sometimes in the budget, we'll take monies that are going unspent and transfer them to other agencies or for other purposes, or carry them forward for some particular use. So I don't know whether you would or wouldn't call it a lapse in that case, but that's one of the reasons we provided the link to the controller's report, is because it will show you what actually carried forward in each account for each agency.
So what I'm kind of looking at here is, you know, when we look at how many opens you're carrying in any given year, I would expect to see lapses. If we have, you know, 40 vacancies, 46 vacancies, 45 vacancies, you know, I'm expecting that there's going to be a lapse dollar associated to that personnel services. And then a corresponding fringe lapse also. So I'm trying to get an idea of basically, you know, everybody that's in your budget is planned as a 7-1 full-time full year employee that automatically builds in lapse. So trying to understand what you're carrying forward. If you're reallocating it to something else, just an explanation kind of what you're reallocating it toward, what are you using it for? And is this being used kind of as a budgeting tool? You know, you have headcount in there that's not being filled, which generates a lapse, and then it's
Yeah.
being applied to something else.
Well, I will tell you that, particularly as a small agency, our headcount, we have, all of the funded vacancies are in recruitment at some point. So they're either posted for applications, they are in the process here of being reviewed, et cetera. So we don't intend, your example of, is it a budgeting tool? No, we don't leave them intentionally vacant in order to have a cushion, if that's what it's kind of where you're headed.
I'll be honest with you, this is this is the only place I've ever seen in the world, for as long as years as I've been doing accounting, that budgets 100% of their staff 100% of the time, especially at the size of the state of Connecticut, is government.
Well, honestly, we don't do that. We recognize that there is some level of turnover in staff, and we know that to the extent an agency attempts to get to their well, we don't tend to here at OPM to use authorized count as a valid metric, because the level of funding you have might support two low paid positions versus one highly paid position. It really depends what the business needs are for staffing. We try to let agencies staff up based on what they're funded for. So if they have funding for staffing, our goal is to allow them to do that. As you've probably heard from every agency, it's a tough environment these days to hire folks in.
Absolutely, which is, kind of where my questioning is leading is, I don't think a single person has come before us that has not mentioned the staffing issues.
Right.
The fact that we've got so many opens right now, I just want to make sure that we're optimizing that in the budget, that we're accounting for, 95% of headcount and not 100.
So we have built into the governor's proposed budget what we call a lapse in personal services. It's a bottom line number. It's a small figure, and I'm going to forget off the top of my head now because I had it earlier today, but I'm getting old now. So I want to say it's, Greg will correct me if I'm wrong, 30 million in the first year and 50 million in the second year. I might be off on that, but that is to, in some ways, account for some of that timing difference between, someone leaving, able to refill the position, and in the meantime those salary dollars don't get spent. It's just sort of a recognition that not 100% of all those dollars will ultimately be spent, but we want to ensure that agencies have the flexibility to hire those positions, so we have not adjusted agency funding relative to PS in that regard.
Where can I find that lapse dollar?
You will find that in the proposed Appropriations Act. Oops, I'm sorry. In our budget. And if you hang on a second, I will find the number for you. Or Greg, if you have it off the top of your head, feel free to chime in.
Well, the amounts are 35 million in the first year and 65 million in the second year. And you will see that on page C.
That's what I was looking for.
C14 of the governor's budget book.
Okay. And that
is statewide or general funds, but
okay,
statewide.
So that's a statewide assumption.
Yeah.
Do you know what that accounts for a percent of vacancy?
Yeah, I think that's a reflection of the fact that all of our positions are not filled.
No, I mean like percentage. Do you know, is that like an assumed 3% of vacancy or a 7% of vacancy, or?
It's much less than that.
It's less than that. In total, there's depending on how one counts higher ed block grants, between $3 and $4 billion worth of personal services in the general fund. So it's in the 1%, 1% to 2% range.
Okay. The only other question that I had for you guys was, oh, I'm sorry, hold on, I'm looking for it. Two questions in your they're quick. The fringe benefits, you have UConn, UCHC, CSU, CCC. What is BAA?
Greg, that's the old Board of Academic Awards for higher education.
Yeah, it's Charter Oak
Charter
State
Oak.
College. Yeah.
Okay, so I was going to say, okay, Charter Oak State College. Okay, and then the last question that I had for you guys is OPM as practice. This upcoming year, are you guys mandating the COVID vaccine as a condition of employment?
I'm not
for
aware
state
that,
employees.
I'm not aware that we have a COVID mandate. Yvonne, are you able to verify that?
We can verify with DPH. Usually that will come from DPH.
For
Yeah,
the state employees. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's not if you're asking, does OPM have a mandate? OPM does not. Whether there's a public health mandate in effect, I'm not 100% certain, but we can check with DPH on that.
I would appreciate it. And I think that's all that I have for you guys. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, well, I see there are two more hands up, and Representative Harrison's hand was up first, so I'll ask you to go first and then followed by Representative Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question for you is, I went and pulled the audit reports so that we can take a look at what they have to say. And while this one's a little bit, or at least what I can determine is the most current one, is a few years old, it does have some key findings and recommendations, and I want to know what's the status of getting them rectified. Thank you.
I'm sorry, did you say audit reports? I missed that part of your conversation. Audit reports.
And
I think we'd have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, with all respect, this probably came a little out of left field, and I'd be happy if you just want to get back to the committee. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
We will.
Thank you. And now Representative Walker, I think you have the final word.
I apologize. I went back to some of my notes on the special session, and I may be wrong, but my notes say that we got the language from you guys, so I just wanted to help along in getting the final conclusion. So I look forward to your response. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is it. I don't see any other hands. And we came in 5 minutes. Well, we started you early. We can't do any shorter.
We went overtime. Okay.
Thank you for cooperating and being here. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a good afternoon.
Thank you. And Taylor, I believe that's it for today, correct?
You are correct. We are done.
Great. Then we will see you all next time.
Thank you.
Take care.